It began with a whisper, one that drifted through ruined streets, across frozen forests, and into the ears of soldiers on every side of a world at war. A whisper about a place where men vanished without a trace, where abandoned equipment lay scattered across the ground, as if someone had snatched its owners straight from the earth. The rumor called it many names, but one echoed more than others: the Silent Route. At first, no one believed it. In a conflict filled with confusion, miscommunication, and chaos, strange stories were common. Yet when entire patrols began disappearing along the same remote corridor, officers could not ignore the growing fear any longer. And so begins one of the most unusual, unsettling, and lesser-known sequences of events from the winter of 1944. Events involving a remote valley, coded messages that made no sense, and a rescue team that discovered something far more alarming than they expected. The valley lay deep inside an area of Eastern Europe largely ignored by both sides. Snowfall smothered everything, muffling the sounds of distant artillery and turning the landscape into a vast, shimmering emptiness. The only signs of life came from the thin tracks pressed into the snow by patrol units. Most of these teams never returned, and the few who did were not the same. Their faces seemed drained of emotion, their eyes wide as though something had followed them back. They spoke very little, and when they did, their accounts were fragmented. A shadow crossing the tree line, a sudden feeling of being watched, or the sense that someone had walked just behind them, silent and unseen. Commanders dismissed these statements as exhaustion or cold-induced confusion until the coded transmissions began. One night, a radio operator monitoring the sector intercepted a repeated signal. 3 short pulses, a long one, then 3 more short. It did not match any known code, but the nearest patrol operating in the valley was supposed to check in at that time. The operator assumed it was a corrupted transmission, but then it happened again and again. Always the same pattern, always from the same location. When a recovery team was finally dispatched to investigate, they found something deeply troubling. The patrol's radios, packs, and weapons lay in the snow, arranged in a perfect circle, as if placed with deliberate care. But the team members themselves were missing. No tracks led away. The snow surrounding the site was untouched, smooth like glass. Command grew increasingly alarmed. Something bizarre was happening, and not even the harsh logic of wartime could explain it. They formed a small group composed of experienced scouts, engineers, and signals specialists to uncover what was causing these disappearances. Among them was Lieutenant Michael Reeves, known for his ability to remain calm in unpredictable situations. Reeves was not easily shaken, but the moment he stepped into the valley, he felt a weight settle on his shoulders, as though the air were thicker here. Snowflakes drifted around him like ash, and even the wind seemed hesitant to move. The group advanced cautiously, marking their route with bright cloth strips tied to branches. The deeper they moved, the more they noticed strange details. Trees with their bark stripped away in clean vertical lines, metal fragments warped as though exposed to intense heat, and the persistent feeling of being observed. When the sun dipped below the horizon, the team set up camp, but the night brought no rest. The same unexplained pulses appeared on their radio equipment. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short, now so close that it caused the devices to vibrate slightly in their hands. Reeves ordered everyone to maintain strict silence as he traced the signal to its source. It seemed to come from an abandoned farmhouse partially buried under snow. Its roof sagged, and its windows were dark, yet faint warmth radiated from inside as though a fire had recently burned there. Reeves approached with 2 others and pushed the door open carefully. The room was empty, except for a table on which a broken radio set sat humming faintly. But something else caught his attention. Fresh footprints inside the house, bare footprints. They formed a trail leading to a door at the back of the farmhouse. Reeves signaled the men to follow him. When he opened that second door, he did not find a room, but a narrow staircase leading underground. The team descended slowly, each step creaking under their weight. The air smelled metallic, like old machinery. At the bottom of the stairs lay a narrow corridor, lit by dim lights flickering along the walls. Strange markings were carved into the surfaces, symbols that did not match any language the men recognized. Further down the passage they heard a faint sound. At first it resembled a whisper, then a rhythmic tapping. and finally the unmistakable cadence of Morse code. Yet what was truly unsettling was that the sound did not echo like a broadcast. It was coming from inside the walls themselves. Reeves ordered the engineers to inspect the embedded wiring. They found makeshift devices hidden behind the metal plates, primitive but functional resonators tapping out the same pattern repeatedly. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short. The message did not correspond to any known distress signal, but Reeves sensed it was not random. The deeper they searched, the more resonators they found, all linked by a single cable disappearing into the darkness of the corridor. The team pressed onward and reached a large underground chamber. In the center stood a tall antenna-like structure anchored into the ground. Surrounding it were crates marked with insignia from multiple nations, German, Soviet, and even Allied supply boxes. Clearly, whoever built this place had gathered equipment from anyone who ventured into the valley. Then they saw the journal. It lay on a crate, its pages stiff with cold. Reeves opened it and recognized immediately that the handwriting belonged to Captain Elias Hartman, a missing officer from a patrol that vanished weeks earlier. The final entries were hurried, shaky, and increasingly desperate. Hartman wrote of something he called the Echo, an unseen force inside the valley that imitated sounds, footsteps, and even human signals. According to him, the Echo used these imitations to lure patrols deeper into the valley, isolating them until they lost all sense of direction. Hartman believed the Echo learned from each encounter, adapting rapidly. The last entry chilled Reeves. If you hear yourself calling your name in the dark, run. Before the team could fully process the journal's warning, the corridor lights flickered violently. A sudden vibration shook the chamber, causing dust to fall from the ceiling. The resonators along the walls began tapping faster, almost frantically. Then the team heard it, a voice echoing faintly in the distance, calling one of their names. It was unmistakably the voice of Corporal Lewis, even though Lewis stood right behind them. But the call came again, louder, closer. Reeves raised his hand for silence, but the tapping continued, faster and faster. Something was approaching through the corridor, but they could not see it. The men backed toward the underground staircase. As they retreated, an eerie calm settled over the chamber. The resonators stopped abruptly, and the tapping ceased. Reeves sensed this quiet was far more dangerous than the noise. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. In the darkness, the team heard the sound of breathing, not human breathing, but something heavier, unsteady, as if struggling to mimic life itself. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, too synchronized to belong to a person. Reeves ordered everyone to move, but the breathing shifted, growing closer with unnatural speed. The team rushed up the stairs, emerging into the farmhouse as a low, vibrating hum filled the air. Snow outside the windows began to swirl violently, whipped by a sudden wind. Reeves slammed the door behind them, and the moment he did, the strange footsteps stopped. The hum faded. For a brief second, silence returned to the valley. They were safe, for now. But their escape was only the beginning of another ordeal. As the team retreated toward their own lines, they noticed the cloth markers they had tied earlier were gone. Every one of them. Tracks they had made only hours earlier had vanished as if someone had smoothed the snow by hand. The landscape looked different. Trees shifted position, ridgelines altered just enough to disorient them. Reeves realized the valley was actively preventing them from leaving. Night fell again, and the familiar pulses began to ring out across the snow. At first distant, then so close that the men felt the vibrations through their boots. But unlike before, these pulses formed new patterns, messages longer than the original 3 short, 1 long, 3 short. They almost resembled copied fragments of the team's own previous radio chatter. The Echo was learning. As they pressed forward through the storm, they saw something far ahead, a faint, flickering light. It was their original camp lantern, the one they left behind that first night. But when they approached, the lantern dimmed and went out. Reeves ordered the men to circle the area carefully. In the spot where the lantern had been placed, they found a fresh set of footprints, bare, human-shaped, but deeper than any normal person could produce. They no longer knew what was following them, but it was no longer mimicking only sound. At dawn, the storm cleared. Reeves spotted the outline of a ridge he recognized. The valley border was close. The men hurried forward, but the sense of being watched grew heavier with each step. They could feel something behind them, close enough that the air felt colder in its presence. When they reached the ridge, the radios crackled to life for the first time since entering the valley. Reeves ordered an emergency extraction, but as the team climbed the final slope, the echo released one last signal, a deafening, distorted version of their own voices shouting for help. The sound hit them like a physical force, shaking the snow off the trees around them. Then it stopped. The valley fell silent. When the rescue unit arrived, Reeves and the survivors were found at the ridge's edge, exhausted, frostbitten, but alive. Yet something was profoundly wrong. The engineers had lost their ability to speak for several hours, not from injury, but from shock. Others kept turning around as if expecting someone to be standing behind them. Upon reviewing the team's equipment, specialists found that the echo's final blast had corrupted every recording device they carried. Not a single second of audio survived. The journal of Captain Hartman was the only physical piece of evidence that remained. The valley was sealed off permanently. Official records described the incident as a weather-related loss of patrol units, consistent with harsh winter conditions. No mention was made of the underground chamber, the resonators, or the echo. Reeves and the survivors were reassigned to different sectors and instructed not to discuss what happened. But some stories refused to stay buried. Years after the war ended, hikers who ventured into the region occasionally reported hearing faint pulses echoing across the snow. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short. Most dismissed it as old equipment malfunctioning. Yet a few travelers described something far more unsettling: the sound of their own footsteps following them, perfectly synchronized, even when they were walking alone. And so the whisper continues, drifting through the frost-bitten air of the forgotten valley. A whisper about a place where sound has memory, where silence is alive, and where the echo still waits.